Keith Pompey is the primary Sixers beat writer for the Inquirer, the Daily News, Philly.com. At Pompey on Sixers. So much to dive into with Keith here on the Sports Bash. We talked earlier about who's running the Sixers, what's next for them. You know, if I was to tell you, Brett Brown, this is your chance to impress me. Did he pass on draft night? Let's bring Keith Pompey into the conversation here on the Boardwalk on the Hotline. Hey, Keith, how you been?
Hey, I'm doing well, man. How you doing?
Doing great. If that was his one and only chance to impress whoever's making this decision, would you say, hey, you did a good enough job that we're going to stick with this group of guys, Eversley, Cohen, Brett Brown, or do they still want to go outside the organization?
You know, it's one of those things you can't base it just off of the draft. You know what I mean? Especially a draft where the general manager resigned 2 weeks ago. I mean, but what I will say is, and another thing is, you know, we never know. You really don't know how someone did on the draft until a couple of years later. I mean, like when they got Jalil Okafor, you know, a lot of people said, hey, that was a great draft. When they drafted Joel Embiid, some people say, hey, what are you doing? You drafted a guy who's not going to play this year. And you know what I mean?
Yeah, good point.
It's one of those things where it's hard to, after 3 days, say how good a draft it was.
Brett originally said, Keith, that, you know, he doesn't want to do this. But now that he's got a taste of it, does he like it?
I think he does. I mean, if you think about it, you know, right now, you know, Brett Brown is the one who's making the decisions. You know, he has a bigger say in what's going on. You know, he came out and said it, that, you know, Zaire Smith was his guy. Now, I think that right now Brett Brown feels that what they got going on is great. You know, he also said, unless it's someone who has a great resume, you know, a big name, a guy who could come in there, a proven person who could come in there and make things happen, you know, you might as well not, you know, rock the boat, so to speak. You know, it's one of those things where, and I paraphrase when I said rock the boat, you know, he's just saying that, you know, right now we have the things in place, the people in place to move forward. And he would like for, you know, he thinks that possibly it can be someone in-house that they have, or it could be someone, you know, who really understands what they're doing, someone who could mesh well with them, who comes from outside.
Keith Pompey is with us here. Can you give us a little insight, our listeners, on Mark Eversley and whether or not he is the best choice in your mind, potentially, to take this? You wrote the other day that the Sixers don't need to look far for a GM. Is Mark Eversley the guy that maybe the Sixers should be looking at?
No, I didn't. What I wrote was that's what Brett Brown said. Don't need to look for a GM. You know, that's not my opinion. Now, Mark Eversley is nice. Now, also Seth Cohen. I mean, he's another guy, you know, within the front office who could possibly do it. You know, the thing with Cohen is you know, he's a guy who worked. Excuse me, I said Seth. Is Ned Cohen. You know, Ned Cohen is a guy who worked for the NBA office. He has a lot of relationships with, you know, with all the teams. You know, he's the one who set up the schedules. He's the one who did a lot of other things. So he has probably, you know, more relationships with NBA teams than anyone else, you know, in regards to front office personnel, you know, in the Sixers organization. Now, the thing about Ned Cohen, you know, he's, you know, not per se a basketball guy when you talk about evaluating talent. So, you know, if you have him, you know, Mark Eversley and some other people, you know, if you keep them, or maybe you could bring in someone else to add to the mix, you know, would be more of the evaluating side. Mm-hmm. But in regards to having communications with people, you know, that could be something, you know, that they can decide to do in regards to Ned. Now, the thing about Mark, you know, Mark Eversley was really connected to Brian Colangelo. Mark Eversley used to be a guy with Nike. Colangelo hired him, to the Toronto Raptors, and then when Colangelo left there, Mark Eversley went to the Washington Wizards, and then he came back. He's a guy who has a lot of relationships with players, and that helps out with free agency and stuff like that because he has relations with a lot of the Nike guys. Now, again, both of them are young. They're, inexperienced, because they're, based on their roles. So, they would be nice candidates, but like you would assume, if they could go out there and get a bigger name, someone who has the same goals in mind that they do, they're going to have to take a look at them. But the things I mentioned to you are the things why Brett Brown believes that, we can get this done. I mean, and something else, when you think about it, last free agency, Brett Brown, got the credit for the J.J. Redick signing. He also was the one who said, we have to go get Marco Bellinelli and Ersan Ilyasova. So, right there, he has confidence in himself, and the ownership has confidence in Brett to basically go out there and evaluate talent and bring in people. But as we both know, this summer they're trying to go after A-list type of guys as opposed to guys who can just fit in and fulfill a role.
More on that later with Keith Pompey. You tweeted out the other day what Brett Brown had said. He said, I don't think we need an overhaul. We're in deep on this. I find it interesting because, like, Brett is the president, interim president right now. Would he essentially have a hand on who he hires to be the GM? Because then, is he back under the microscope by the GM, who essentially, when you bring a new GM in, they want to bring in their own coach?
I don't think Brett Brown's going anywhere. Right now, he's a coach who received a 3-year extension. He's a coach that has a great relationship with the ownership group. Right now he said that he could, he didn't say how much of a say that he would have. He's unsure of that, but he did say that he will have a say in what goes on. But, if you're a general manager, I guess that's not quite a situation, that you would like to go into unless, you're a first-time GM. You just want to get your feet wet. You want to have a nice job and just go with the flow. But no, I don't think that Brett Brown has to worry about a general manager coming in at this stage saying, hey, you're fired, bringing in someone else. Right. He has face it, they gave him this one extension when he was 1-20. So, Brett Brown is fine.
Yeah. Well, and I wasn't suggesting that a new guy would come in and then automatically clean house, but it would be an interesting situation that he would be the guy hiring someone who then essentially would be evaluating the guy who hired him, right?
Yeah, exactly. I understand what you're saying, and I know what you're saying not immediately, but I don't think I understand where you're coming from, but it's one of those things where this is a unique situation.
The coach is almost on better ground than the coach is almost on better ground than the GM.
Yeah, but whose fault is it? That's the is again. I get what you're saying, and it great for a great storyline and all that, and it's nice. But whose fault is it? It's not Brett Brown's. It's not the ownership's, and it's not the GM that's coming in. Like they were working on an extension for Brett Brown. Like I remember he said this on the owner told me this like in game 1 of the first round series. And then Brian Colangelo said, yeah, we're going to work with it. So it is a messed up, meaning we're going to work and we're going to extend him.
Yeah.
The day he gets his extension is the same day that this report comes out. So, in a perfect world, everything would have been, you have a chain of command. But right now it's like, if you're the, you can't fault Brett Brown. It's a good situation for him to have.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think Brian Colangelo or, his wife, whoever had the burner accounts, they're the ones who created this, and it's unfortunate for the next guy. But at the same time, it is what it is. Like, let's face it, Brett Brown has a 3-year extension. The guy's going to come in here. If Brett Brown, if he does well, he keeps his job. If he wins 40 games next year and wins 20 the next two, he's not going to keep his job. So, it's one of those things.
Keith Pompey is with us. All right. What is your take, Keith, on this Markelle Fultz situation? His shot guy, Hanlon, is saying he's got the yips. I don't know if that makes the story better, worse, or what, but where do you stand and where do the Sixers stand with Markelle now?
I mean, I don't think the story has really changed from when, like during the season when he wasn't playing. I mean, because, we all knew that he had the yips, the only thing is I know that Brett Brown wanted him to go to Summer League, and it doesn't look like he's going to play in Summer League. Brett's out there. It's a sad situation when you look at it, and it's the first overall pick. And, he did come back, and it just seems like he regressed a little bit on his shot. And, now they're trying to build some momentum with him. They're posting more videos of him dunking, of him dribbling, doing layups. But, you got to realize it's a sad situation because you would hope that, he would be able to be out there, at least just showing us videos of him shooting jumpers as opposed to just showing them driving the lane. Now, where they move on from here is, they're going to, they have to give him an ample opportunity to show what he can do. We'll see more, I guess, in the preseason and then the next regular season. And then, I guess they have to decide what they're going to do after that. But in regards to, this guy coming out and saying he had the yips, I mean, which is, someone we finally got someone quoted saying that, but it's something that I felt like we all knew, since December.
So with that, and I see, Zaire Smith, Landry Shamet, Shake Milton, they got a lot of guards in here. Are they putting themselves in position that if they have to move Fultz, they feel comfortable doing so? As opposed to, it appears that they were not comfortable moving a guy like Dario.
Of course they're going to say no, but when you look at something like that, you look at these guys and you look at salaries and you look at other things, it could come to that. But at the same time, I think that, here it is, if Markelle Fultz, if Markelle Fultz works out and he becomes the guy that they want, then everything is great. You got the guy that you could play at the 2 guard who can, become the backup point guard when Ben Simmons is out. He'll be able to hit his threes. I mean, you look at the videos and you see the things he can do. He's extremely athletic. It's just that right now he has to, make the shot. And, this is the thing. When you really look at the 76ers right now, there are only 2 guys on the team, in my opinion, who are untouchables. And that's Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons. And I feel like everyone else, for the right price, can be moved. The thing about Markelle right now is, it's like if you move him at this particular time, you're probably not going to get what you want for value. Now, someone may give you, a couple second-round picks. They may give you a first-round pick or whatever, but it's not going to be, or they may even give you a player, but it's not going to be like what you expect them to receive for trading a first overall pick. So that's the dilemma. Now, again, I think everybody is hoping and praying and wishing that he can turn this thing together. But, you have to, imagine and you have to expect that if he doesn't, if they can get something for him in the trade, why wouldn't you try to move him?
Keith Pompey is with me here on the Boardwalk on the Hotline. So, 2 questions. One, do the Sixers feel LeBron, Paul George, Kawhi are realistic targets, number one? And number 2, do you think that they will be in play for any of those guys?
Yes and yes. Yep.
So that's
yes and yes.
So when Brett Brown says we are star hunting, his message is those are the 3 guys we're hunting.
would you say when he star hunting? I mean,
when he says that, is that his message that we're star hunting, guys?
I don't know. What do you think, man? I mean, like I like you, dude, but sometimes you try to when Brett Brown says we're star hunting, are they the three guys? I mean, what do you think?
I would say so. I mean, just trying to see.
I mean, but like we've been talking about this for the last 3 weeks, right?
Pretty much.
Yeah, pretty much. So I'm just asking, so what do you want me to give you a sound bite?
No, I'm just trying
I'm just saying, do you I'm not trying to argue with you, but you asking me questions that you already know the answer to.
Well, I mean, theoretically, I mean, if they're not, everybody assumes they're going to go after those three guys.
Okay, let's break it down. Let's break it down. So, at the end of the season, they came out and said that they have a really short list of guys they want to go after.
Yeah.
Right? And then I wrote a story saying these three guys.
Right.
Right? And then Brett Brown basically comes out and describes them. And then he goes out and he gets a draft pick, right? And he clears out cap space and he gets a draft pick.
Yeah.
And then I'm telling you, these are the guys they want. Now, again, what I'm saying is that's who they want to get.
Right.
And are they in play for them? Of course.
Okay.
Now.
And that's what I'm asking. All the signs that they've done, it's still pointing that direction. Nothing has really swayed from where we were a couple of weeks ago.
No, nothing's way. I mean, now the thing about it is, here's your problem. The only problem, if they have problems, what's going to happen is it's Kawhi really wants to go to L.A. Now, as much as Popovich and the Spurs say that, as much as they say okay,
we're not sending them to the West,
you where you want to go. Well, if that's the only place that's going to give you what you want, then you have to do it. Now, if you're the 76ers, yeah, you can get Kawhi if the offer's right, if you come out the right package. But the thing with the Sixers are, how do you feel about gambling on a guy who you're going to give up some assets, and you're probably going to give up that Miami Heat pick, the 2021, for a guy who you don't know if he's going to be here a year or not. I mean, past next season.
Right.
So that's what they have to decide. Now, who knows? Maybe they can work out a deal. But I think that right now, when you have a guy you have Joel Embiid, you have Ben Simmons, yes, they're in play. Now, again, I don't know what their percentages are right now, to get a LeBron, because it just seems as if that, people are saying, and it changes every day.
Yeah.
People are saying
it changes almost every hour.
Every hour, people are saying Cleveland or LA, So, again, it's one of those things where I think the 76ers are in play because they have young assets, young great players. They also have some assets. They're freeing up cap space. They probably have more cap space, via a trade or via waiving Jared Bayless, and then they can stretch his contract. But all I'm saying is, nothing's changed, man. Nothing's changed since the last 3 months we've been talking.
Do they want to bring back JJ?
I think they do. I mean, I think they do. But the thing is, it's just one of those things, you have to be careful with that because, and not with bringing them back, it's let's say if you chase LeBron and you're basically, waiting for LeBron to make his decision. I mean, J.J. Redick is the type of guy where there are going to be certain teams as soon when 1201 hits on July 1st are going to throw major money at him. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and they're in a tough spot there.
You got it. Yeah, you have to decide what you want to do. Now, again, I'm not saying J.J. Redick is going to make $23 million again, but I think he's way more. I mean, he's worth more than $5 million. You understand?
Sure.
So that's the thing that they have to decide.
Oh, definitely in a tough spot if they're waiting on these other guys and JJ's getting other offers. It's hey, guys, sorry, I can't wait any longer. I got to go over here. These guys are offering me the big bucks. So they're in a tough spot if they're going to have to wait. And we'll see it all play out. It all starts, Sunday night, July the 1st. It should be a wild opening to NBA free agency. Keith Pompey covers the Sixers, Philly.com, the Inquirer at Pompey on Sixers. Thank you, Keith. Appreciate it.
All right, man. Thanks.